Asylum. Written in hiding at the convent of La Barde d'Ordogne, 1943-44, and revised at La Barde in 1945. Forward. This book has nothing to do with literature as normally understood. The circumstances of its composition preclude that from the outset. To begin with, there was everything that happened to me before November 1942, the date when I found refuge in the Franciscan convent of La Barde. It was while I was in hiding there that two friends, Pierre Worms and the great writer Jean Cassou, who had himself just come out of prison, finally persuaded me to undertake the project. Even then, though, our salvation from the Germans was still a long way off. The Gestapo headhunters were going to their sport more energetically, and the fate of any Jew that they tracked down was more gruesome than ever. There were many times when, even if by good fortune I managed some work on this book, I did not know whether I would be delivered into the clutches of the Germans the very next day. Many times when I was forced suddenly to suspend work for an indefinite period, to bundle the papers up hastily so as not to put the sisters of the convent in serious danger. Many times when, to put it bluntly, the end seemed to be before me. In such circumstances, you do not think in terms of creating literature out of all this material, or of having a good story. If I did have such thoughts, indeed, I would hardly deserve to have survived the persecution. It may be that the way in which the words, the sentences, the pages of which this book consists have been put together is the result of a certain intellectual effort, but their content, their essence, has a quite different source, and that source is a profound emotional anguish, an anguish in which the wretched sufferer is able only to keep repeating the same stammering question: how could it all have happened? Any answer to this question would have to address the guilty, all the guilty, and would entail an appropriate punishment. In this case, however, a true day of reckoning of that kind is highly unlikely. The more time passes, the less importance the world will attach to such a notion. People will have more important concerns than the responsibility for war crimes in general, and the suffering of the Jews in particular. But that does not make it any less necessary to pose the question, and to keep posing the question: how could it all have happened? Even if all one may hope to achieve by doing so is to stir the conscience, the thoughts, the anger of just a few individuals. There is, too, an inescapable duty to bear witness, to play one's part, however modest that may be. This book has no ambition beyond that of recording the witness of a Jewish refugee. I have absolutely no pretension to be a historian. If I touch upon wider events, I do so only insofar as I experienced them myself. It would be wrong, too, to characterize the work as a memoir. My own life is only of importance to the extent that it was dragged into the stream of world events, the opposite of the case with a memoir. Besides, memoirs aim to be as interesting as possible. I have made no attempt to be interesting, only to be truthful. Nor have I been principally concerned with accounts of external events, even with a description of atrocities, but rather with the attempt to express an internal condition, a state of the soul. My deepest desire has been to portray the mental misery that the German persecution created in us Jews. Even among the survivors, so many have carried on, but with their souls broken, maimed for life. I know that I will provoke the criticism in some quarters that I talk too much about Jewish refugees, as though nobody else existed, as though others had not suffered too. It is absolutely true that others, innumerable others, were made to suffer no less than we. And I have not failed to make mention of that. I myself happen to be both a refugee and a Jew, and one who bears witness must bear witness to his own personal experiences. But there is another point, too, and that is that whatever those others were made to suffer at least had some connection, direct or indirect, with the war. Their treatment at the hands of Germany was unprecedented and absolutely without justification.